All right, and greetings, and thank you all again for joining us. Today is June 19th, 2022. We are joined with Catherine, and Sophia is here too. And like I said, if anybody else wants to join, please let me know. I know because today is Father's Day, which was not planned, but it just happened to work out like that. So we are going to go through the autopsies. We'll see how far we can get here. We'll just go about 60, 70 minutes. Of course, we say that all the time. We know how that goes here. So we'll see how far we can get with that. We're going to look at the actual autopsy reports, the final autopsy reports, and we're going to also read a little bit through my book here. So I'm going to pull this up and we will begin. Ladies, please feel free to stop me at any time if there's anything you want to bring up. So this is from the book. The physical book page number is 27 on the PDF, which you can download for free right now. That would be page 43. This is from the Examining the Bodies chapter. Okay, so let's go through the actual examinations. The bodies of David, Camille, and Rania were removed from the house at 1:30 a.m. on January 18th and taken to the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's office. Rania's autopsy was conducted first at 8:20 a.m. Camille's autopsy began 10 minutes later at 8:30 a.m. and David's body was conducted last at 11:50 a.m. I don't like the way I wrote that. I feel like there should be another word there. David's body was examined or something, right? Not conducted. He's not a he's not he's not some electricity or something to be conducted. Anyway, I am working on a hardcover here, and there are a few things that I was able to find.
Just
And
take out the
so
word body. And
take out the word
David's
body.
was and David's was conducted at 11:50.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All right, cool. I'll do that. I don't know, that just sounds weird. Body being conducted. I don't know what. I'm a conductor. No, they're conducting David's orchestra. It's like an orchestra, a
Chamber music.
maestro. Chamber music. There you go. Oh boy. Okay. Well, this is another reason why I like reading through this book sometimes, because I find things. And I feel like the way, for any writer, like even the book is never really done. You're just always continually writing it. And I feel like J.R.R. Tolkien kind of taught me that, reading a lot of his stuff. He kept writing till the end of his life. Thankfully, his stuff was only fiction. But this is real life stuff that we're talking about here. So because Ranya's autopsy was done first, we're going to start there. We're going to read through some of the stuff that I have in the book, and then we're going to actually go through her autopsy report. That's what we'll do here first. All right, so the pathologist for Ranya's autopsy was Jessica Lelinski. She was assisted by Mitchell Morey, AVPD's Jim Gummert, Brian Bone, Sean McKnight, and Tommy Booth were all present during the actual autopsy. I found that pretty interesting because they're not all present during the other autopsies, from what the actual autopsy reports say, or from what I think it's either in the police reports or it's in some of the BCA documents. But it's pretty interesting that they're all here for this one. I don't know if that means anything, but that just really stood out to me.
The
The
autopsy reports actually says who's attending it.
Oh, it does? Okay. Yeah, I
Mhm.
haven't read them in a long time, so this will be the first time that I read this, that I've read this since probably about a year or so. Um, so just take note because I may get some things wrong here, but that's okay. As long as it's right in the book, that's what matters to me. So, positive identification for Rania was made by quote unquote circumstantial information. That was another thing that stuck out to me because when we talk about how do you identify them by their DNA, right? By their dental records. She was positively identified by quote unquote circumstantial information. Does that mean anything? Does that stand out to anybody else? Just
Well,
me?
that is interesting because when I was reading through the reports yesterday, it was saying that they were pulling her dental records. So did they or did they not do that?
That doesn't seem like it.
I haven't gotten
No.
farther into the reports yet, but that seems weird.
She might not have dental records. I mean,
Oh, well, I don't know. She should.
I mean, yeah, she should.
I don't
But
know. Maybe we're weird. We always I make my, well, my kids are really good. They take their kids to the
mhm,
dentist from the time they start getting teeth. So
yeah, that's what goes on in our house too. But I don't know. I mean, it just could have been different.
yeah,
Yeah, it was just interesting to me. Things that kind of stood out, especially because that's not how they identify David and Kamel as we go on. And I don't know, could they do it by DNA if maybe they don't have those records either? But I would think like a hospital, or if Rania had some medical issues, I would think there may be some of that there. But and it's almost like my first thought was, well, they're writing this, that day or something, but that's not true either. We're going to find that out. What we're reading is the final diagnosis. It's the final diagnosis of the medical examiner's report, and stated Rania was shot in the right parietal scalp. The bullet went through her brain and exited the left. I, Catherine, what's that word there? The
okay.
left.
So well, let's get the it was shot in the right parietal scalp, actually
Yes,
the parietal bone. The bullet then went through her brain and exited the left postauricular scalp or bone, the
thank you.
section of her, the postauricular.
Okay, post-auricular. See if I can remember that.
Notice how she's on the right, and then David and Kamel are their exit wound is on the left,
Yeah,
which is interesting.
yeah.
So she's shot on the right and it exits the left and rolls out somewhere into the carpet and vanishes for 2 days.
Yep.
Pretty much is what happens with the bullet tied to Rania. Three gray colored metal projectile fragments were found in her left temporal skull. I thought was pretty interesting too, because I don't know if that's the case with the other bodies, but her head is the most intact of all three of these heads. So, but it's
Yeah.
also the smallest, and I would think a bullet would travel much faster. So the three gray colored metal projectile fragments that are mentioned, those kind of stood out to me too. Found in the left temporal. So they didn't exit the left temporal. Um, the trajectory was described as leftward, downward, and backward. It looks like Rania was shot from behind, on the right side of her head, next to the ear. Does that sound about right?
Um, Not from behind. A lot of people are saying, with all three of them that they were shot from behind, and it's not. It's from behind, like say behind the right ear. That's not
Mm,
the back of the head.
true, true.
So it's
Right.
just like you go up and just put it right behind the back of their ear and pull the trigger. But from where they're standing, where was it? Leftward, downward, and backward. So they were probably like standing toward her front, like the side front, and then pointed it down and then toward the back. That type of thing. I know you can't see me pointing to my head, but yeah, sorry. Sorry.
Go ahead, point to your head and now I can see it.
It's like, okay, so here's her ear. It would be like this direction.
Okay.
So it would be this way,
What's
not
the
from here.
backwards when they say backwards?
It's not going side to side and it's not pointing toward the front. It's kind of got an angle where it's going. That's why I'm like, it's not the back of her head. So it's
Right.
like this way, just the angle. So it's going to go this way and then toward the back of the head, but yet it
Gotcha.
exits out here somehow.
Ah,
where it
okay.
is. So
Okay.
it's like it's going toward the back. So it's not going toward the front. It's not going toward the side. It's going this way.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. All right. See which one am I? There we go. Okay, so the range at which she was shot could not be determined, but there was no suit or stippling, which would have indicated murder at close range. Does that sound about right?
Um, Soot or stippling, yes.
If there was no suit or stippling.
Yeah, soot.
Hmm.
Soot. I
Sorry,
like suit.
God, I'm
Like
sorry.
suit. Yeah.
I know
I
it's
like to
such a
wear my
bad
suits
habit.
really tight.
I wanted my suit, my sweetness. Yeah, but the soot or the stippling, yeah, but that's something Sophia and I were just talking about the other day, and that really stands out because as we go through her autopsy report, well, I'll point it out in the autopsy reports, but yes, it does seem odd because there should be something there, something on her clothes, something on her hair, but it's not.
Yeah, and this was the most difficult chapter for me to write. Catherine helped me a lot with this. So the final autopsy report, which was first dated February 6, 2015, with signatures dated March 16, 2015, stated Rania was found partially decomposed with moderate decomposition. And Catherine, can you go back over moderate decomposition? What date range would that give us?
And I believe hers, it's depending on who you talk to. I think hers is hers strictly, well, we'll go through it, but it's early is like the very beginning, and it's called autolysis. Now, this is super important because we will cover this in the autopsy reports. That's roughly like, say, day 0 to 3, 4. Early, well, and then early moderate kind of then goes over maybe to day 3 to 5, and then moderate. I mean, it's all kind of, it blends into the other, being from like, say, 4 or 5 or 6 up to roughly day 10. So depending on the conditions. So early to moderate would be anywhere from like day 1 to, say, at the latest, day 7,
Wow.
day 10. So that's why the medical examiner I spoke with, I mean, right away, instantly, without even hesitating, and all I had, though, to give fairness to this medical examiner, was a printout on photo paper. So I just handed him that, and he's looking at that, and without hesitating, he goes, they're 4 to 7 days. He goes, I would say 10 days at most, but he said these bodies have been dead 4 to 7 days.
Wow.
And that goes along with the decomp of their bodies. It all fits.
Interesting. I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Is it livor?
Liver.
Liver, discoloration of the skin, and rigor mortis, stiffness of death were absent. That's pretty interesting too, I thought.
Yep.
How would that be?
The stiffness and rigor mortis, it just means that they've already gone through that process and they're past it now.
Rigor generally takes 12 to 24 hours. It doesn't last very long. In the conditions that they're in around the 68-degree temperature, it would have been they would have been in full rigor, and then rigor would have subsided well within 24 hours.
So what we see with David's left hand, would that be rigor mortis or no?
No.
Okay.
No, that was, I mean, you can, again, from the position of where his hand was on the one photo we do have, and then compare that with the photos that were taken, that hand was manipulated. And I will argue anybody on that one.
And the liver discoloration of the skin is is that something that happens early in the process?
Yeah, it's just basically what they call just how the skin starts to present and how it starts to discolor during the decomposition process. And yeah, that happens with everybody. Well, okay, those people who are not burned or scalded, in these situations with a natural, well, not natural, but a regular progression of decomp, yes, liver mortis would be something you would see.
And this is, I mean, the bodies were, we've seen the photo. We've seen a couple photos that show the body, and there's some kind of yellowish ones, but there's some purplish, and there's some other discoloration of the skin, I would say, in those photos.
Yeah, and that's why, we know that because on advanced, and this is the thing that gets me, because you see in all of the reports and so many officers saying advanced state of decomposition, and that is an absolute lie. So these guys and gals were writing these notes with either on purpose trying to make it look like something it wasn't, or they were uneducated and they were writing stuff they should never have. If you don't know what you're talking about, you just don't frickin' write it. Advanced decomp is where the skin starts to turn black and it starts to putrefy and things start to melt. These bodies are not in that state. It's not advanced decomp.
Interesting.
Not at all.
So Sophia, in the Pinnock case, did you get the autopsy, or is there any mention in the police reports or anything about the decomp of the bodies?
They were only dead for about 8 to 12 hours, so it really wasn't
It just wasn't
mentioned.
mentioned. Okay.
And the autopsies were not for public release. So I guess something had to be signed or whatever, but they weren't going to be giving those out. And there wasn't any BCA information.
Okay. They missed a bullet there too.
Yep.
1 or 2 bullets. Okay. Even so, according to the external examination, early to moderate decomposition is evidenced by skin discoloration, marbling, blistering, slippage, and partial mummification of the face, left hand, and feet. So that's what kind of threw me off, is that it's, they had said earlier that the discoloration, they really said the liver was absent, but then here they say that there was discoloration, skin discoloration.
Okay,
So I
so
was a
there's
little
a
confused.
difference. Okay, there's a difference between livor mortis and lividity.
Yeah.
Now, livor mortis is the discoloration and what happens to the skin and how during the decompositional process. Lividity is the line, the pattern that the blood leaves as it pools in the lowest part of the body, wherever that body is now touching the lowest part of the ground or wherever it's at. So when the blood begins to pool, it then leaves this line. You can see red. It's indistinguishable. You can't miss lividity. But that, again, that's completely different from livor mortis.
Okay, thank you. Okay, where are we at? Okay, so the mummification, partial mummification of the face, left hand, and feet. Any of that, I mean, this is why it's early. I mean, that's the other thing. I said early to moderate decomposition. That's a quote from them, from the actual autopsy. So I found that pretty interesting because, like you said, in all of the police reports, they all speculate. All the officers, are like, yeah, it looks
and
like
they clearly don't know what they're talking about. And I mean, we can tell that it's early to moderate because they are able to dissect the organs. The organs are the very first thing to liquefy. So when it gets to moderate to advanced stages of decomp, by that point, the internal organs are just pure liquid. There's nothing there to cut up. You open it and it's just a puddle of liquid. So yeah, this is another indicator that they still were in very early stages of decomp. Now, the partial mummification takes place, and it's easy to do because with the face, hands, and feet, there's very little fat, very little muscle. It's thinner than the rest of the body, so it's to be expected that would happen and could happen, and does not, just because it's partial mummification does not automatically, okay, now it's advanced. See, they're in advanced stages of decomp. They were dead for 3 weeks. No. It's just how those parts of the body start to decompose based on the fact that they don't have, when you have a lot of fat and muscle and stuff, there's more cells, there's more autolysis taking place and more things to break down the tissues and stuff around it. But when that's missing, it starts to then mummify. I mean, eventually it's going to, fall apart. But in this process, at this stage, this would be something you would expect to see.
And it also depends on the environment. If it's a dry environment, low humidity and everything, it would mummify a little, the chances of it mummifying are higher than if it was outside exposed to the elements and moisture and everything else that's going on. And so when I asked a forensic expert early on in this case, when I started looking through email, and he said, sure, send me some questions and stuff. And I sent him the question about the mummification because that was getting me every single time. To me, everything that I had learned was that it took time for the mummification to happen. But he was telling me it depends on the environment around the bodies. And then, of course, we have the vents that are there in the house. The furnace was possibly on, which I'm assuming it was because it was wintertime. And I'm just thinking that it might have just dried out the very thin skin, like Catherine was just saying.
Yeah, people get hung up on that word mummification, and they automatically assume it means that they had been there for a very long time, but it's not. You have to look at the parts of the body and it says partial mummification, so it was only just starting. But you have to look at, again, the internal organs, and those internal organs, and the fact that they were able to cut them open, and not to be disgusting, but it is an autopsy, but to cut them open and then to take tissue samples and slides and put them away. That tells you that, again, it's early to moderate at latest.
Interesting. All right. Let's see. The examiners also observed, quote, evidence of post-mortem animal scavenging. So here we have, some actual proof, somebody actually saying in the autopsies that there is evidence of animal scavenging. To me, that was very important to find any evidence of animal scavenging. Not just what people think, not what the people saw, but for the actual medical examiner to say that, I think is a very big point there.
Yeah, but then they lose me on this next sentence, because this is where I'm like going, nope. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen, maybe with David and Kamel, but this one, when you read that next sentence.
Okay, next sentence. The evidence, so their evidence of quote unquote post-mortem animal scavenging was the absence of the right arm.
So because there's a right arm missing, they're saying the dog scavenged on her. Sorry, that to me it's inexcusable. They didn't take into account anytime now a limb is missing off of any body, it means an animal did it. It means no other way could it have come off. You're in an accident at work and it takes your hand off. Oops, animal did it. See, I can tell because it's missing. They show no other proof in their writing right there. Their evidence was simply the fact that the arm was missing. So that told her that the dog did it.
Yeah, and it's also this next sentence here too, what they say of kind of, then they go into that, right? Okay, well, what about the absence of the right arm? And this is where I was and this is why we're going to read through the actual autopsy report here, because that's why I put possibly related to animal scavenging was the jagged and tattered skin of soft tissue defect where Ranya's arm would have connected to her shoulder. So they do mention quote unquote jagged and tattered skin and soft tissue defect, but that would be if the arm was ripped off, it would be jagged and tattered too, right? So
yes, exactly.
I don't know how relevant that is there, but I'm trying to throw them a bone here.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but one of the first injuries I saw was a pull off of somebody's fingers from their hand due to farming equipment. And there's a distinction when you see how that skin, when it's pulled off, it's tattered and it's jagged. And so that's what I'm saying. When I'm reading this, I'm like going, they're not saying they see dog teeth prints. They're not saying that they see dogs scratching. Like with David's, like there's a scratch. They're just saying by tattered skin, the fact that the arm is missing, so the dog did it. Yeah, I don't think so. In my opinion, I just don't think so.
Yeah. Let's see what else here. According to the report, the 10 by 8 defect expose the glenoid fossa.
Very good. Yes.
Oh, wow. I probably heard you say it 20 times. Maybe that's and the lateral right first to fourth ribs. So I want to read this next one, but then I want to get your thoughts on this. So that defect, the hole where her arm should have been, um, it exposed the glenoid fossa and the lateral right first to fourth ribs. But most importantly, I think with this is that also observed was the fracture of the third rib and quote unquote numerous short white hairs adherent to the pants. So obviously they're going to try to tie those short white hairs with the dog, and but the fractured rib, the fracture in the third rib. Let's put it like that. There's a fracture in the third rib. Okay, so I think that really is pretty interesting too. Any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Um, can I do a visual here real quick for people?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in medical terms, the body's split in two. You have what's closest to the middle is called the medial, and then on the outside is called the lateral. So when it says the lateral part, it's up underneath here. And the ribs start up on here on your collarbone, and then it goes 1, 2, 3. So it's probably very close to her armpit underneath her arm. And it's this lateral third rib that is fractured. That is a very difficult place to go. I mean, if a dog's going to be ripping and pulling on an arm, it's not going to be applying pressure to this rib cage. I mean, it does. It's going to be taking and yanking on that arm and pulling the body. The body would not have been in the position it was in. So it some type of pressure was applied enough to fracture that rib. And children's bones are still pliable because they're growing. They're not, so they can take a lot more pressure before they actually fracture. Like our bones, as we get older, they're harder. Well, until you get older than they get soft bones. Some do, but again, they're especially the ribs. They're very pliable, and you have that intercostal tissue, the muscles in between the ribs, and then so you've got a lot of leeway and stuff. So to be able to fracture, and just the third rib, I find very, very weird. That is not something I can picture the dog doing. How does that happen? And they never explain any of this. Nobody says, okay. I mean, they don't come out and say the dog fractured that rib, but they just say that since her arm is missing, well, okay, it's okay, the dog did it because there's a dog in the house and her arm is missing. But they explain nothing at all.
We got Crip Rick in the chat room. Hey Rick, how are you, my friend? He's got a question here. If Paleo ate as much as he is blamed for, would they not rule that as severe animal scavenging? Just wondering. So where they say possible animal scavenging, and maybe I think that was my wording there. But if the dog did all of this damage, do you think in these reports they would say something like that? That there would be severe animals? Is that a terminology that they may use?
I don't know. I would think that they would at least use the word obvious. That it's not just instead of saying evidenced by the absence of the right arm, they would say evidenced by the teeth marks in the skin, teeth marks in the remaining muscle tissue, or teeth marks in the bone or on the ribs. But they don't say any of that. They just say the evidence is because the arm is gone. But yeah, I think Rick is onto something, that if it was in her case, now there are times where they do word it differently with David's and Camille's, and we'll see that where they're a little more sure about their writing and the fact that it was actual dog scavenging. But this one, it's just not, it's too up in the air.
I'm just messing around here. Okay. was trying to figure out how. I know there's a way that I can, like, if I wanted you to show something, Kath, there's a way that, I can put you here instead of just me, but I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do
I
that
don't
yet.
know
I
either.
don't know if the free version does that or not. I'll have to ask Jamie, or maybe Rick knows. Rick has, I think he's got the paid version too.
And
But that would be nice. Go ahead, Sophie.
just for the record, I do believe that there was dog scavenging. I do believe that maybe Paleo could have done some damage. I do not believe that he did everything that he's being blamed for. So there's no explanation for the arm and the skull pieces. Uh, Animals out in the wild don't even eat the skull, so it's too thick.
It's a lot of skull to eat.
Yeah.
And then other skull pieces, right? Or other pieces that are found at the crime scene too. And that was another big thing is, how many bones and everything and how many pieces of the skull and all of that were actually still there. But I mean, for me, just someone who doesn't know anything about, I never went to a mortuary school, let's put it like that. But just kind of looking at the crime scene photos and everything, it's like, wow, like David's left hand is right there. It's right there for the taking. You're telling me the dog went after the right hand but didn't go after the left hand? I don't know. I've just always had a hard time buying that for some reason. 'Cause it's right there.
Well, here's the good news. You don't have to go to mortuary school.
Oh, thank God. Then I'm in the clear. Well, I'm going to say whatever. Let me start speculating on it. That's all I had for what I wrote in the book. It's very short. You can see this whole chapter is very short because because I didn't go to mortuary school. I want to be very careful about what I said. But Catherine, thank you again. Catherine really did help me a lot with this chapter, and I'm sure there's probably other people too. So if anyone else did, thank you too. But Catherine is really the one that I kind of went to for some of these names, for some of this stuff, looking at it. And that's why the chapter is one of the smaller chapters, because I don't know that much about this. All I can do is look at what they are reporting. I just wanted to basically document it and leave my personal views, my personal thoughts about what this means, what that means out of it, and save it for roundtable topics like this, where I can ask those questions that maybe people aren't really, they're kind of scared to ask. I'm not afraid to ask. I'm not afraid to be wrong. It's not about me being wrong or being right. It's about finding out what the truth is here, and that's how we do it. So,
well, and that's the beauty of the autopsy reports and stuff. When it comes to this, you can't have an opinion. When I'm reading this isn't my opinion. This is what the doctors have stated. And a medical terminology is a medical terminology. The parietal bone is a parietal bone. It's not a kneecap. If it's going one direction, that's the direction it's going. So you can't just have an opinion. They're telling you exactly what took place. But by reading this, then this is telling me that the narrative is wrong just by this alone.
mhm. Oh, there it is. That's how I do it.
And the fact that the organs are still being able to be cut into and sampled and examined. Anything that's in a past a later stage of decomp, past a certain amount of weeks, like say for instance 3 or 4 weeks, they're going to start to liquefy and you're not
And
going to
not
be able.
start, they would be complete liquid. There wouldn't be anything left. The
Yeah.
organs are the first ones to go, and that's because during autolysis, as it breaks down, there's a lot of bacteria in the gut. And so with that bacteria, then all of a sudden you've got all of these things now just being expanded, and that's how the bloating, it creates gas, so the body begins to bloat. So that's how you know that Camille was getting toward the moderate phase of decomposition, because she was bloating, right? And that's what happens. And as the body bloats and as these gases are released and these start really get super fast and breaking things down, it liquefies everything. There is nothing left. there would, if these bodies had been there 3 weeks, there would be nothing to autopsy in the sense that they were done. I mean, sure, they could still take tissue samples and, of the liquid, the decomp fluid and stuff, but no. Sorry, it's my grandson. He's calling.
Well, let's talk about lack of fluidity
Mm-hmm.
and the blood. Would that slow down the process of the decay on the internal organs, in your opinion?
Well, and that was something that Christy had brought to my attention with that article, which is why I did the live stream a few days ago. And with the research I've done, unless it's like total exsanguination or a complete bleeding out of the body, it really has negligible effects on the decomp process. Now, if they're completely drained of all blood, then yes, they do show in their testing that it can slow down to a degree, but not enough, not even by that point, that it would be 3 weeks before the internal organs would then be liquefied. It retards it, but not so much that it would be like in this situation where they would, if they were totally exsanguinated in the situation, they would probably be more mummified than decomposed.
I would have to agree. Yeah.
And I'm talking the whole body, not just a partial hand and foot and face. And again, her face, because that's the side of her face that was on the ground. So the rug and stuff is like wicking, pulling away the moisture from the skin, which then just makes it easier for the mummification process to begin. Mold, mummify, it's all right there. So,
and you can see the decomp stains on the carpet.
Yes.
But you can't see the blood.
Correct.
Now, how many times have you both went through this autopsy of Rania, would you say?
Quite a bit.
Times, yeah.
I just reread it yesterday, as a matter of fact.
So this is 7 pages long. Wow. Gunshot wound to the head.
And I find it interesting where they say partially decomposed. So that's telling you that her whole body has not even started to decompose yet.
Found partially decomposed. There it is. What does that tell you, or what are your thoughts when you read that?
That goes along to me. That goes right along with what they were saying with the early to moderate decomposition. That it's only just beginning. It wasn't advanced. If it was advanced state of decomp, they wouldn't be using the word partially.
They would clearly know that it was advanced.
They would say, they would have to say advanced stage of decomp because they couldn't be dissecting her. But the fact that they're dissecting her, she has to. Her hands are tied. Medically, you have to. If you're dissecting, it's early to moderate.
And that kind of throws the whoa, what happened there? The 3-week theory, that kind of throws that out the window.
Correct.
Not kind of, but
it's flying.
Let's see. Let me go back and reshare that. Yeah, so if anybody does want to read this is, I believe it's in the group files too, but you can go directly to my website, thegraystage.wordpress.com. You can download this and read it for yourself. Let us know what you think. The range of where she was shot is also another interesting thing. If it's indeterminate, let me put it like this. If this was a close range shot, would they be able to determine that?
I think so. I don't know why she would say indeterminate range, because Okay, let me give her some benefit of the doubt, because I really believe, if I remember my research on her correctly, she was just really out of medical school for this type of thing. So this was really her first big case. So for her, maybe it was indeterminate because she was just learning, so to speak. So I kind of want to give her some leeway there, but a seasoned ME would be able to say, okay, if there's no beveling, well, they could have said in excess of maybe 3 feet away or something like that. But why they would say I mean, you can't say for sure they were 6 feet away, they were 2 feet away. Or, well, I guess I could say, because if it was 2 feet, I think that there would be stippling and soot on her. But so I'm not sure why she would put indeterminate range, especially since there's a round beveling mark around the entrance wound on her head. And they state that right there, but they don't say what oval. I was reading the autopsy report, but the oval shape around the entrance wound, but they don't state how that oval shape got there.
Okay. And this next one I want to ask you about here, where the wound actually enters the right parietal scalp, is what they write here. Parietal, sorry. Mm-hmm. Parietal scalp. So what I want you to do is, if you can, and I've made it full screen. Okay, right parietal scalp, right there.
Parietal.
That's parietal. I'm never gonna get that right. I'm sorry.
You will. I promise you.
You just told me it 3 seconds ago, and I still got it wrong. The right parietal scalp.
So this side.
Let's see how long I can remember that. But okay, so that's where it goes in. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the entrance. Okay, thank you. And then we'll go the path from the right parietal bone. And I guess that's what was throwing me off. Well, first it's the scalp, then it's the bone. What's the difference here?
It's
eggs,
actually the
tomato thing.
I think what they're doing is the scalp. They're calling the skin. So on the outside, so it has to go through the scalp before it gets to the bone. You have to go through the skin before you get to the bone.
You have to go through the skin before you get to the bone.
Right, because your bone, your scalp is covered with your skull is covered with your scalp. So
gotcha.
The scalp, then it hits the bone, then it hits the duras, then it goes through the brain. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right. So it goes through the right parietal bone with internal beveling and fractures. Dura, like you said, dura, brain, dura. How come dura dura covers the brain?
The duras are the meninges. Yes, that's what covers it. You have 3 separate dura that cover it. And yes, it's since it covers the entire head, you've got it on one side and you also have it on the other. So it's going through that. It goes to the brain, then goes to the dura on the other side, and then exits the left temporal bone, which is interesting. Hold on. I'm going to get my Grey's Anatomy book for you.
Nice.
And while you're doing that, maybe I can get the... nerves. Okay, keep talking while I look up in my... so you guys can all see Grey's Anatomy. Coming from
not from the TV show. Not related to the TV show. Okay.
No.
That's okay. So yeah, I definitely want to talk more about. So it goes to the left temporal bone, then it exits the left. What's that word? Postauricular scalp.
Postauricular
scalp. So that's the exit. They get the entrance, the path, and the exit. They don't know how far. They don't know the range, but they have that. So not too much more. Associated injuries, skull fractures, the recovery. They recovered projectile fragments from the left temporal skull. The trajectory is leftward downward, backward. I think Catherine went through that too. No evidence of natural disease, moderate decomposition, and evidence of post-mortem animal scavenging. That's what they're going to talk about. And I think those are some of the, I mean, this is nice right there. It's like, well, obviously having a hard time understanding this, right, is really it's going to make a big challenge on page 3 through 7. So it's another reason why when I do this stuff, when I write these books, I don't like to speculate that much on it, because I know there's people out there who understand this stuff, and people that are willing to answer these questions, that are willing to look at this stuff. So I'd rather just put what they're saying here, try to summarize that in a book form and put it out there. And hopefully I didn't miss too much in this one for Rania. I think this is the shortest. It's only like what, 4 paragraphs that I did on Rania there, so there wasn't really that much there. Let's see.
So basically, and then exits out behind her left ear is basically what it's just telling you for the lay person. Trying to find a good picture of the skull.
That's me. I'm the lay person. No problem admitting that. I think I don't want to go too much here, but I'll go back. Oh, it's still screen sharing. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, no evidence of that. Modern the toxicology. I don't know. Anything interesting in the toxicology? I didn't find anything. Liver drug screen. Didn't see anything of note there, but the actual dates to me are always going to be very important. Who signs it? What are the dates? Who is the Lauren? Did we ever find out who this Lauren W. Jackson? She's the reviewing pathologist. So I'm trying to understand the difference between Jessica, who is labeled as the deputy medical examiner. Then you have the assistant medical examiner. Then you have the reviewing pathologist. Is the pathologist higher than the medical examiners?
Yeah, probably the Dr. Jackson is the one who's probably head of the entire facility. And since it's a child, when I was asking the ME here, he was stating that because it is a child, that they would need all 3 of them to review it. So that's probably why you have 3 signatures on hers, but not on the others.
Interesting. And could that be why there was 4 police officers there?
I don't know why those officers had to be there. I have no idea.
Yeah, this is interesting to me.
Unless they were super interested in trying to find something that, I don't know. I have no idea.
They were all there. If they were all there, they should have heard about this fractured 3rd rib.
Yep.
Probably should have followed up on that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something a dog could do? Fracture that 3rd rib?
Not that.
Can you show us again, now that I know how to put you on full screen, show us again where that 3rd rib would be?
Okay, so we've got the midline, middle, lateral, outside of the body, and it would be up underneath here because it starts up here at your clavicle. Your ribs begin up here. Mm-hmm. So 1, 2, and 3 would be right about underneath the armpit inside, right in the middle down here. And it would have been up in here. So that there had to have been a lot of pressure again, because their bones are a little bit more pliable because they're not hardened yet. And again, you have to remember there's intercostal muscles between each rib, which then makes it, that's how come our ribs can expand and contract, because we're breathing, inhaling, exhaling, and all of that's for a purpose, which makes it more pliable too. So the amount of pressure needed to fracture that rib up underneath there would have been quite a bit. And could the dog do it? I don't see how. I want them to show me, because I don't see how it could be done.
Interesting.
I mean, when people do CPR, and which is different, because when people do CPR, you will if you're doing CPR right, you're going to fracture and break ribs. It's inevitable. That's how you know you're doing it correctly. Well, usually, but it's also you're pressing on the sternum, which then connects the ribs to the sternum. So you're actually cracking the areas where they connect. But over here, up underneath there, how did they do it? I don't think the dog could.
Good point. Okay, so let's go. Boom. Is there anything else? Yeah, okay, so covered all that. So that's pretty much the basics of her autopsy. But yeah, Sophia,
Can you
you're
go
right
down
here.
just a little bit more to the external examination just right there? I wanted to see something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, see right there up above, you saw where it said moderate decomposition, but right here, early to moderate decomposition is evidenced by skin discoloration. So here she's stating early to moderate because that's the truth. Early to moderate, you can still take the slices of the organs. And but you will see up above, all of a sudden it's moderate when it's convenient, but early to moderate when you really get down to the nitty gritty of it all.
Right here in part 3,
Yeah.
moderate decomposition and evidence. Yeah, well, I mean, why change it right there? Or is that something that maybe Lauren W. Jackson could?
No,
No?
they just look over the reports and everything. They probably didn't even pay attention, to be honest with you. Maybe it was a slip. Maybe whoever was typing it, the transcribing what the doctor's saying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are lots of things, but it's something they should have caught, right away, because we know all along it's been called early to moderate, but in that one section at the front in the synopsis, then they're putting moderate because when you look at it that way, it looks like she was dead longer, right? When you have early decomp compared to moderate decomp. And so I see it as a mind game. It's like, no, state it for what it is. It's early to moderate, not just moderate decomp. Moderate decomp, if it was strictly moderate, it would have been a little more advanced than the early stages. Because even before that, remember the very first paragraph, it says partially decomposed. So that's telling you there's some sections of her that had, were still in the very early autolysis stages. Oh, let's go to the very bottom. Do they do that on hers? Can you go to the very last page real quick?
Page 7?
Yeah, I want to see if they list hers like they did David's and Kamel's. Okay, maybe
Should go up a little bit. This is page 7, maybe page 6. Let me start. Additional procedures.
Okay, so they did hers differently. Okay, it's not the same template that they used. So okay,
which part are you looking for?
On the end of David's and Kamel's, it has, let me pull up, and we will go through that later at another time, but in the very last pages of theirs, they list microscopic examinations.
Okay, yeah, hers is here. It's here on page 7 here.
Okay, let me see. Let me get down their page. Okay, there we go. It's just differently. Show autolysis and postmortem bacterial growth. No significant pathologic abnormalities are identified. A section of soft tissues surrounding the entrance gunshot wound of the head shows blood, fragments of gray matter, white polarizable material, and granular brown material. So again, it's showing autolysis, and autolysis is just the beginning phases
of
decomp. I'm sorry.
Decomp. Interesting. Decomp. Interesting. Autolysis postmortem. Section of the heart, liver, and kidney.
Yep. When you go through all of those, you see that they can weigh them, they can see them, they can tell you that they're intact and in their usual position. And you cannot do that if it's advanced decomp.
That's fascinating. Wow.
There'd be nothing that they could weigh or slice to take samples of if it was advanced decomp.
Why? Because there wouldn't be much to weigh, or
it would be
it would be liquefied.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
There would be nothing to cut into because it would be so either pure liquid, which, like I said, you would open it up and you would just have a bunch of goop, or it would just be so mushy you couldn't cut, because if you did, it would just go. And not to be rude, but it's the reality. It's what happens when you die.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating that they can tell all that just from the heart, the liver, and the kidney.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shows blood fragments of gray. What's the gray matter? What is that? Just the flood,
Brain,
parts of the brain.
Hmm.
brain, yeah.
White polarizable material,
I don't even know what that.
granular brown material.
I don't know what the white polarizable material is. Granular brown material might be where was like dried blood coagulated and just kind of made little granule type things. That's a
Hmm.
possibility.
Interesting.
The white material shows up several times in the BCA reports. Might not be the same thing though. It's just talking about the white plaster from the ceiling. And
Yeah, let me see if I can Google that real quick and see if I can. What's polarizable material? Was that the right word? Material, polarizable
Yeah,
material.
white polarizable material.
I gonna learn something here today, and maybe not because it's pulling up material for clothing. Oh wait, here
If you put in,
I found PubMed. Hold on.
okay,
um,
what is it? PubMed.
yeah, well, I'm at PubMed right now.
Polarized material as a
As a
clue.
clue, but that's it. It doesn't say anything else. It just says no abstract available. Oh, I
What
hate it when they do
about polarizable material from a biopsy? Oh,
that.
polarizable material, white polarizable material. I guess I'm gonna put in autopsy or something. See
There
if
you go.
anything
yeah,
comes
that's what
up.
I did. And
No, the same things come up pretty much. Yeah. All right. We'll come back to that then. Um,
Oh, that's interesting.
maybe it could be bone.
No,
Maybe.
I don't think it's bone.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll take some looking into. So maybe we can bring that up next. Yeah, because I don't have a clue what that is. Eeks. Sorry.
Um,
and nobody identified the body, right? As far as we know. I mean, it's not mentioned. Maybe they did, but in the documents we have and the people that we've spoken to, there's never been any mention of. I know Kamel's sister mentioned, you know, touching her sister's body. Maybe she identified Rania then too. But at this point, as of March, I'm trying to think when Kamel's sister went. I think she went there right around that time. May have been after March 16th. Um, it's just kind of weird that no one was able to positively identify. And I don't know if that's something normal either for a child. I mean, not saying it wasn't her or anything, but it's just kind of weird.
where did it say the white polarizing material?
It's on the very
Oh,
last page.
yeah, it's page 7 under the
And
microscopic evidence.
does it say what part of the body had that?
Mm, It doesn't because it just says that based on the sections of the heart. Well, let's see here. A section of soft tissue surrounding the entrance gunshot wound to the head. That's where the white polarizable material was found.
Okay.
So maybe that's just where it started to, I don't know, mold. Who knows? Break down.
Very possibly,
But
yeah.
I wanted to mention something too because in her autopsy report, it states that they found 3 fragments. Correct? Didn't it state 3 bullet fragments at the very, very beginning?
Yeah, let's go back there. It says project recovery projectile fragments from left temporal
Up a
brain,
little
but
bit
yeah,
higher. Yeah. Okay.
it may
Oh,
have been. Yeah, it may be down here
okay.
somewhere else. But
I thought I saw 3. I don't know why 3 stuck in my head. Thought we read that. Oops.
no, I think you're right. I think it's in here somewhere where it says that.
Because I know you, I thought you had it in your book, so I know
Yeah, I
if
put it in
it's
my
in your
book.
book, you got it somewhere.
Yeah, it's here somewhere. And this is why it's easier to just put all that in the book and, oh, hey, go read this.
Yeah.
Let's start with the book, and then based on that, you can go find that. But yeah, it's here somewhere. Fingernails are short. A tentative skin, a soft tissue defect, edges.
Well, the fact that it says that they recovered projectile fragments, it's plural. So it's more than one. Now we know that item number 53 is the only one that was the bullet that was found a couple days after that rolled out.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at that bullet fragment, it is only missing one petal. Maybe, I don't know, one, maybe two, I can't tell. How many petals do they normally have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe. But I noticed that this one, I don't know if it's only missing one petal though. So if this one is only missing one petal and she has multiple fragments or more than one in her skull, this could not have been the one that got her. Because if it's not missing
Yeah,
that,
here it is.
it's not the one.
In the recovery, so recovered from the left temporal skull are 3.2 to 0.8 centimeter maximum dimension gray colored medical projectile fragments.
Okay,
It's page
so
5.
that now pull up if you, I have I wish I could share my screen because I pulled it up the photo of item number 53, the one that was found, and then that's the one that had her DNA or blood on it because that's the one that rolled.
Mm-hmm.
That one is only missing one petal. It's not the bullet that killed her. The
Interesting.
bullet that killed her is missing 3.
And that's based on what again? I know you were.
You just read it in
Yeah.
recovery. On what
Yeah, in the
page is that
recovery.
on the
On the autopsy, page 5.
Page 5. Okay, there it is. Recovered from the left temporal skull are 3.2 to 0.8 centimeter maximum dimension gray colored metal projectile fragments. And we're looking at item number 53, and it's only missing one petal. Everything else is there.
Let me see if I can pull that up.
Yeah.
That's in here.
Yes, I think it would be super important for everybody to see that bullet fragment.
Okay.
That bullet. Sorry.
Okay, so I got that up. It stopped sharing here. And we'll share. Oops. Share this one here. See if I can make that. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay.
If you look right below where that pen is
Yep.
pointing to, you see the missing petal section.
Mm-hmm.
You can scroll, and I don't know if you can scroll and make it bigger, but the rest of that bullet is there.
Oh, maybe I can here.
There you go.
Just one miss.
So how could that have been the one that killed her if there are 3 projectile fragments in her brain?
And they were able to measure these by centimeters, so it's not like they're teeny,
Right.
teeny, tiny.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow.
See, the more we keep looking at this, and the more we start comparing everything, the more it just jumps out at us that the truth of it all.
Yeah. Fascinating.
And that's why we said, on top of that, if you get a good attorney, they can easily throw out 53 and 57, no problems. Number 53, because they can't, because it rolled. They don't know, like I said, as it's rolling, could it have gone through her DNA or her decomp or whatever that was on that rug?
Mm-hmm.
Is that how it picked it up? But now we see, because the autopsy itself states that there are 3 projectiles from point 2 to point 8, which is pretty good size centimeter. That's pretty good size.
Mm-hmm.
You know, pieces of projectile within her brain. And then item number 53, the bullet that everybody, all of us, but see, this is the problem, I think, where all of us have been guilty is we all have just assumed because that had her DNA. So that was the one that killed her. They never say that. We do. But now I see why they never say that, because it doesn't match. But what that does tell them and tells us is that there's a bullet missing. Where's the bullet that killed Rania? 2, actually. Where's the one that killed Rania? Where's the one that killed David?
Well, I think there's still the question of how did Ranya's DNA then? I mean, let's say item 53 isn't the one that killed Rania. I'm still leaning towards it is the one that killed her. But let's say that it isn't. How does her DNA get on that bullet?
I just told you it was rolling in the rug. We don't know. We don't know how they were rolling it. We don't know where that was when it started rolling. And as you're rolling up that rug, it's going to be tumbling. And it obviously might have come across, well, not obviously, it might have come across wherever her body was lying on that rug, her decompositional fluid, the part of her head that was on the floor.
But she's on top of Kamel, so wouldn't
No,
Kamel's?
she's not. That's only in the photo, and that's after they've moved her. When you look at the original drawings, she is laying between her mom on the floor. Her mom's legs are spread, and she's on the floor on her left side. Her head is on the floor, her body's on the floor. So some of her decompositional fluid is on that rug.
Right, but I think they do that. They put it in that way to kind of show you how each bodies were actually laid out, not to show you, well, they were side by side. That's my take on it.
The drawings are how the bodies were when they first walked in. So we have Kamel's legs, we have Rania between her mom, on the floor between her mom, not on top of her leg next to her dad, which is what we see in the photo.
But
her
that's
body
not.
had been moved by that point.
I don't think so. Because that's not how the police. That's not how they describe the bodies either.
When you look at I've been reading this last night. It is there. I've copied it. It was so when you're depending on which officer it was and what time they entered that residence and started taking notes, will tell you what they saw first. And the very initial people who were there at the very beginning state that she is between her mother's legs on the floor on her left side, left arm forward. Then later on, you see she's partially over her mom's leg. So you have the initial point, and then they draw that out. The sketch shows you she's between her mom's legs on her side. And that's what I'm saying with her. So her body is actually touching that rug. And we don't know. So all we know is that the cleaning crew was rolling up the rug, and all they know is that a bullet rolled out and hit the floor. And then they left it where it landed. So since nobody knows where that initial bullet was on that rug, but in the process of that tumbling out, it could have easily come across the area where Rania was laying. And then as it's rolling, it picked up some of her DNA as it's rolling out. It's the only thing that makes sense, because you just saw it. It's not missing 3 projectiles off that bullet. It's not. So if in her head are 3 projectiles, that's not the bullet that killed her. It can't be. It's missing 1, not 3. And right now I'm just trying to absorb all this because I just saw that. I'm like going, oh, holy cow, wait a second.
Yeah, I thought the police report said that it was on Rania was on like Kamel's left leg. Right, not on top of her or anything, but on the left leg. And even looking at the photo,
the photo was taken after. Okay, this is what I'm saying. This is why I keep telling you there was someone in there moving things. And so the initial officers, because there are 2 or 3 of them that describe her lying on her side between her mother's legs, and then the rest of them describe her as being partially over her mom's leg. So that tells you in between times somebody picked that little or moved her for whatever reason. They should never have done that, because the ME should have been able to walk in and take a look and seen everything in situ, but somebody was in there moving crap. And it's not only evidenced by the photo, but evidenced by the writings of each, the notes of each officer that was at that scene, because they're not consistent.
Yeah, and I think that's why I really wanted to know if this photo is real, the one that Tony Floyd got, if this one
Oh,
is
yeah,
a real photo.
don't get me started on that
Yeah,
one.
we were talking about that last night, because I know Sophia's been real adamant about that. Oh, that one.
Yeah, because if this is a real photo, like it's Rania could have only been where the calf is, basically. Not even where the calf, the lower side of the calf. You can see the rip marks or something else there, but where that white part is supposed to be where Rania is. If this is a real photo, then yeah, she's not really on there that much.
Yeah, that shows you that she's actually between her mother's legs as well. But I don't even believe that's a real photo either, because when you're looking at the design on the rug, it doesn't match up with the rest of the photos from the crime scene itself. But we can talk about that at another time. But yeah, even that photo shows her between her legs, not on top, because the photo we have, she's literally like on top of her mom's legs, like right behind the knee, right in that area. So you would have been visible in that photo if she truly were on top of her mom's legs. But
So interesting.
yeah, I read yesterday. I read um, the 466-page report, the 485-page report, and got halfway through the 488-page report. And I've been marking these notes, taking notes and doing screenshots of these pages to compare these notes, and they don't add up. And again, it solidifies in my mind that there was somebody in there moving things that should not have been. A rookie, maybe, was it on purpose, or was it a rookie mistake? And and then maybe they got reprimanded. We don't know. But all we do know is that it's not consistent and those bodies were moved.
Right.
But again, we're going back to Rania's autopsy. Number 53, again, it's only missing one petal. But her brain, they recovered three projectile fragments. So why didn't they put that together? Why aren't the officers going, okay, we don't have a bullet that has David's blood or DNA on it. We have nothing that shows Rania's blood on it, or matches the condition of a bullet that Rania is. We found the ME found 3 projectile fragments in her brain that are measurable, pretty good size. Why was this not enough for them to question?
Great question. I don't know. I don't have an answer.
I'm sorry, it just makes me really upset.
I understand. Let's wrap up here. Let's see if there's anything else in this particular autopsy here. Thank you both for joining me. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Always a good chat, and I always learn something here too. It always goes back, and that's how it is. That's how it's gonna be. That's how I'm gonna be. That's how I am here. Just gonna keep going through it, and like I said, there's always something new here, and it's always good to get some. That's why we like to have other people looking at this stuff. It's very important for everyone to have access to it, easy access to
And
it.
can you go to the bottom of page 6 of her autopsy report? Are you on that?
Let me get there. Okay, here's page 6.
And this is I just want to, again, you guys know me, I reiterate everything a bazillion times. Right? Let's see, maybe down just a little bit more. Oh, but even her fallopian tubes are intact. Right there. The esophagus is intact and lined by gray-white, partially autolyzed mucosa. The stomach contains digested food fragments. No medication are discerned. The gastric wall is intact. The duodenum, loops of small bowel, and colon are unremarkable. The appendix is present. This tells you she's in early decomp, early, moderate, maybe by some of the discoloration, which some of this discoloration could have been due to the fact that her arm got pulled off. I don't know. But her stomach is still intact. Her bowels are still intact. The duodenum is there. Her appendix is there. They were not on that floor for 3 weeks.
Wow. At the most, 7 to 10 days is what you're thinking?
I stick with what the ME told me. You know, I really believe what he said, and I go by people's visceral reactions, and I'm telling you, his visceral reaction was straight off, not a thought. He goes 4 to 7 days, and then the more he was reading the reports, he goes, well, 10 days maybe at most. He says, but my best guess is 4 to 7 days, but on the outset, 10 days at most.
Wow.
And I stick with what he said.
I think it was a couple days longer, but I'm not a medical professional, so.
Well, if you're going 12 days out, that's close to 2 weeks, and then you're going to see more decomp taking place, especially within the internal organs.
Yeah.
Because 68, when I did a lot of research on what a good ambient room temperature would be and how the stages of decomp work, and across the board, the average, when they're doing the 5 stages of decomp, the average temperature, believe it or not, was 68 degrees. And that's what that house was set at.
I just don't believe that they were there on the carpet for the whole entire time.
Well, and that I will agree with you. But I agree with you on that. But I do not believe that they were dead more than 10 days. I think 10 days is pushing it.
If they were refrigerated?
And we could say that's a possibility, but we don't have access to that. You know, it would be jumping unless we could actually read and see the cellular damage, because freezing a body or refrigerating a body to cool it down, it would show at the cellular level, and we just don't have that.
Is there any place in this where that would be, where that would?
No.
No.
And they don't mention anything about that at all. The only thing they say is that they took samples and saved them. Specimens retained for toxicological testing, and representative tissue biopsies are submitted in cassettes for microscopic examination, and additional biopsies are retained in formalin for potential microscopic evaluation. That's all we have.
Read the next sentence there.
All recovered projectile fragments are photographed and placed in separate label-sealed envelopes.
So they have the photos of these projectile fragments that you're talking about.
Yeah, but we don't have them, do we?
No. Don't expect that we
So
would,
frustrating.
But we should.
But though you're saying those, or you're thinking, right? Those, the recovered projectile fragments, should line up with
Item
a bullet,
53.
right?
If item
Yeah,
53 truly was the one that went through her, it would match up, and it would show 3 individual petals gone. You would see where 3 projectile fragments would fit, but you don't.
Wow.
And again, I'm just trying to absorb this myself because I just saw this too. So we don't have her bullet. In my opinion, we don't have her bullet.
Well, I think that's a great place to kind of leave this one here, unless you have any final thoughts or anything.
I do, actually.
Yeah.
For item 53, you will also notice how clean it is compared to Kamel's bullets that were right there. We know that those bullets went through Kamel. They have her DNA on it. They tested positive for the blood. And you can see it's got tissue, it's got blood, it's got hair on them. They are dirty. And then you look at item 53 and item 57, and they literally shine.
Let me pull that one up again.
And like you were saying, there's no hair within the mushroomed petals. There's nothing. And definitely with 41, 42, and 43, you see, like she was saying, you see the hair all wrapped up. And it's got none of it.
They look like a little hair right here. Oh, you can't see my cursor, but kind of on the left hand. So.
Yeah, but again, it was also on the rug, and the rug was loaded with hair.
Yeah, right. Good point.
So again, and that's what makes this so, and that's what I'm telling you, it wouldn't even take a good attorney. It would take a mediocre attorney to get this thing thrown out because of all of the unknown variables. There's no way that they could say that this was, anything. They have nothing to prove it.
Right. Yeah, and for people just joining us, this is supposed to be item 53. This is the only bullet that ties to Rania, that has her DNA on it. It's had somebody else's DNA on it too. It does not have Kamel's or David's DNA. There is an unknown DNA source on this bullet fragment, or not a fragment, this spent round. It's called a spent round, I guess, for us laymen here. But this rolled out of a carpet 2 days later. So the bodies were found on January 17th. This particular bullet that we're looking at here rolled out of the living room carpet while the cleaners were in the house cleaning it on January 20th, right?
Yep, and what everybody needs to understand is that David and Kamel, it's a mixture of 2 or more DNA found on this, and David and Kamel were excluded.
That's important.
So Rania's is it's included, but yes, David and Kamel are excluded.
And we can't say for certain that it was the cleaning crew or that it was the officers when they bagged it, because they weren't ever excluded. So we cannot say for certain that's who they are. That's the DNA is on there.
Yeah, what we do know is, because when I was reading through the reports, it was written as it was written. The cleaning crew told the apple vet. Now again, we only know because did they touch it? But I think that they would know better. But according to the call that they made to the police, that they were rolling the rug, and as they're rolling it and moving it, it came flying out on the floor, and they were kind of like, oh, great, we just cleaned this floor of all biohazard, which means they had to now go back and do it again. But they didn't touch it. They left it where it lay. And then when the officers got there, they photographed it where it ended up. But yeah, like Sophia was saying, maybe in the process of rolling, could they have touched it? We don't know.
But they were never excluded. So
correct.
This was something that they needed to do. Okay. Now I'm going to be going back through the autopsy reports again.
And the item 53 in the DNA reports, this isn't one of those that says, well, actually kind of does. So it says major profile would not be expected to occur more than once among unrelated individuals in the world population. What does that tell us?
So maybe by doing that, they are excluding the cleaning crew and the police, right? I mean,
because they're saying unrelated, yeah.
So if you're not related to the family, you're excluded, basically. So what does that tell everybody? They're not checking related individuals. And again, that's the thing that bothers me. And I'm not accusing, because like Sophia was pointing out at another time, the other family members were in that house. Were they walking barefoot on the rug? Were they touching things that this could have come in contact with? Could it have picked up their DNA some other way? Yeah, but the fact that they're not excluding even family members is questionable.
Well, this is what makes January 19th so important. All the people that were in the house on January 19th, when they shouldn't have been in there, this makes that even more important, because it could have been them. So
Yes.
they should have DNA tested all those people that were in the house on January 19th to make sure that this DNA, this unknown DNA source, did not match them.
Exactly, because if they're in that house, and who knows? Let's just say, for argument's sake, that everybody took their shoes and socks off, and they're walking around barefoot, and say, and I'm not accusing, I'm just throwing this out as an example. So Dan Jr. is now walking around there, and he walks. They're thinking they're walking around, not stepping in it, but they're walking, around, trying to figure out, maybe pick something up, and inadvertently he steps on that bullet, doesn't know, and then the next day it rolls out, or a day later, whatever, it rolls out, and then they take it to the lab. It would have his DNA on it then, but absolutely explainable. But because they don't do anything, like Sophia was saying, they don't exclude family, we're left with this big question mark.
What do you think about the weight of this item? I mean, this does tie in with Rania here with the autopsies, because this is the bullet that we're talking about. Just to be clear, on January 20th, 2015 is when this bullet was found by the Biotech Emergency Services. They were a company hired to clean the crime scene. They were in the process of actually removing items from the residence when a mushroom bullet, item 53, which is on screen, rolled out of the living room carpet. This spent cartridge had some white material on the surface, weighed 169.54 grams, and was found with an expanded nose.
Or grains. Yeah, and it's 180 grain. It weighed 169.54. Yeah, and then when we're looking at item number 31, which was just basically a petal, and that one weighed 19.14 grains.
Mm-hmm.
So when you put 19, if you figure the average weight of the petal is, like 19, 20 grains, and you put that with item number 53, that tells you that basically only one petal is missing, just like the photo shows us. So we still are left with Rania's autopsy that shows 3 fragments. So all of this information, you start putting it all together, and you're realizing 53 cannot be the one that killed her, because that would have put that at almost a 200 grain bullet. And they don't go 200 grains, they're 180.
I mean, this is all in grams, so how do you convert?
Grains.
No, but how do you convert grams to
Well,
grains?
no, with bullets, it's grains.
It's grams. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing it wrong. I see.
Oh, I did too the last time, and trust me, I was corrected. And I'm glad people did, because I kept saying grams, and they're like, I can't tell you how many people sent me like personal stuff.
How dare you?
It's grains. And I go, I know, I made a mistake. I'm sorry.
This is why you need to go to mortuary school.
I know, go to mortuary school.
This is what happens, even though it has nothing to do with mortuary school. You're good. Don't worry.
And so I'm looking at the spreadsheet, the spreadsheet I did with that listed all of the weights of all of the bullets that were found and the fragments. And again, item number 53, it only weighed 169.54, and out of a possible 180. So that's what, roughly, it's a little over 10 grains that it's light in weight. But the fragment itself, that number 31, which was just one petal, was actually almost 20 grains. So by doing all the math on this, that absolutely tells us that 53 could not have been the one that killed Rania, because within her skull were 3 fragments. So those 3 would have weighed somewhere between at least 15 to 20 grains altogether, which is too much to be with this one. It would put this one completely way overweight, and it would make that one almost 200 grains, and they don't do that.
Wow. There it is. Okay, I'm really going to stop it right there, because I think that's a fascinating point right there. Any final thoughts from anybody? I want to say hi to everybody in our chat. Thank you all for joining us late notice. No notice, pretty much. A lot of people not getting any notifications. I got a notification about this about 20 minutes ago, so we're,
I
we're
haven't
all
even
in good
gotten a
shape. You haven't even gotten
notification.
yours. It's coming. It's coming. It's
Yeah,
on the
as
way. The
soon as
check
we
is in the mail.
end.
As soon as we end, yeah.
It's been pledged. Sorry. Anybody who
Wife
watched the trial knows.
knows what you're talking. Next. Objection, 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 Your Honor. So I think next week we are going to talk about, well, next week we have to record the podcast, I think. We have to record the next podcast. So maybe in 2 weeks, maybe we can come back here and do part two, go through Ranya's autopsy, see how far we get with that, and then definitely want to do David's. But thank you both so much for
Didn't we
joining us
just
here. I
go
hope
through
this helps.
Rania's?
David and Kamel. Sorry, Kamel's autism. So we're gonna go through Kamel's next, and then we're gonna go through David's third. Okay, so that's the goal, anyways. So, all right, everyone. Thank you all for joining me. Catherine, any final words? Any new videos you and Sophia have coming up? I know you guys are working on some stuff. Anything you can talk about yet?
Well, my voice is my throat's really killing me. My voice about gone. I'm gonna let Sophia do that if she doesn't mind.
Catherine
We
did a drop
just
mic section. Yeah, go ahead.
we just completed a video and it premiered on Friday, and that was regarding the prints that were found at the crime scene and how they're too small to be David's. I'm not saying who. I'm not even going to try to assume whose prints those are, but they are
It was
too
a
small for
hobbit. It
David's.
was a hobbit. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay,
J.R.R. Tolkien.
might as well go with that. I mean,
Hey, Frodo did a
everything
lot of
else.
damage.
And we explain in the video several different things that debunk that those prints are David's. And then I showed some prints that I had made that I even had a sock on, and it was, you couldn't tell that I had a sock on. And
Interesting. Yeah, I
yeah,
like that part. Yeah, that was interesting.
and then the paint was thin, well, not super duper thin, but it was what I would consider like consistency or whatever. And I would I had measured my fingers and my hands, my feet, my toes, and then I made the prints. And then I went to go back later and measure those prints that I had made, recreated, and they were between a half a centimeter to a centimeter to a centimeter and a half bigger than my actual fingers and hands, toes, and feet.
Wow.
So, and it was because you're putting weight and pressure and you're smushing it away from the center, the liquid. And so, anyway, those
And I found
prints.
that. I'm sorry. I found that so interesting when she did that to prove that the print left from her sock and stuff was over a centimeter larger than the size of her foot. So that says a lot about what's on that floor.
Well, even when I did it without a sock on, it was still bigger than my normal foot. And so whoever made the print or whatever made the print, their foot was much smaller than David's, or their hands or whatever. It was smaller. If you were to lay it up against David's foot, it should have been bigger than the ball of the foot and the pads of his toes. It should have been much bigger. But we don't see that. And that was interesting. So anyway, and we have more stuff coming out on the blood spatter. We're getting down to the nitty gritty on that one. And we have a video once Catherine's voice recovers. we have a new video that we will be filming, and it's about the hole in the ceiling. And so that's all I really want to get into that one.
I was gonna say, wow, really tease us there with that one. It's the hole in the ceiling. And for people that don't know, or for people that want to dig a little more, what she's talking about, Sophia's talking about
The
item
ceiling.
57.
Yeah, the living
Yeah,
room
item
ceiling.
57.
Sorry.
Right. This is the bullet that was found, or the hole, right? There was a hole that was nobody knew about apparently until they spoke with a guy named Chris Klein. Chris Klein was in the house 2 days after the bodies were found. That's that's what they've actually documented. It's speculative, I guess, or there's conflicting reports about who else was in the house with Chris Klein. We know that Chris Klein was there. He saw this bullet hole. The police did not see it. Nobody in the house on January 17th saw it. Nobody in the house when they came back on January 20th saw it. Nobody has reported seeing this bullet hole. So they didn't even know about it until February 17th. The police first saw it on February 18th, 2015. And that leads them to a bullet that was found in the actual attic. And of course, there's no blood on that bullet that they find in the attic, which is item 57. So it's one of the more stranger things, I think, about this whole case. I believe, anyways. But you know, so I'm looking forward to what you have about that. I thought we covered everything about 57, but obviously not. I thought we covered everything about 53 too, and obviously not. So there's obviously more to cover, more to think about, and more to talk about. So yeah, just if anybody wants to find any of the actual documents, you can go to thegraystage.wordpress.com. You can download everything that we have, the documents, the photos, the video, the transcript of the 911 calls from Judy Prochnow and from Colin Prochnow. They're both there, so you can read those. We have pretty much everything that Tony Floyd got later on. It's the David's journal. We now have that. A lot of documents that after Tony Floyd made it public, all of a sudden we also got them too. It's kind of strange to me, but at least we have them. At least the public has them. And if you want to read them, if you want to go through them, you can. You don't have to listen to anybody else. You don't have to wait for anybody else. And there's still some more issues with a lot of this stuff, I think, but we'll see where this goes. What I'm seeing is we still have a lot of people that are just learning about this case, or a lot of people that are just they haven't looked at it in a couple years. They want to know what is new, what's the most newest stuff, and I get that all the time, and I'm horrible at giving a good answer to that question. I'm like, guys, there's so much new stuff coming out. Like, I don't know where you stopped watching, where you stopped listening, what your last thing was. That's why it's just like, if you haven't read these documents, it's definitely time, because we have them all there, and I think those will help you figure out whatever you think about this case. Where do the documents lead you is what I would want to know. And it seems like in people who are actually taking the time to read it, it leads them all to the same place, that there's no way David could have done this if you read the documents and if you actually can understand them. And so it's like, the hardest one for me to understand are these actual autopsies. These are the hardest documents for me to understand. And if there's something that proves David Crowley is guilty in the medical examiner reports that I'm not seeing here, I want to understand what that is. Everything else kind of seems common sense. A lot of it is common sense, but for some reason I really struggle with the medical examiner reports. I do. So that's it. All right, good people. Thank you all for joining us. Hope you have a great Sunday, and we'll be back next week. We'll be recording. I don't know if we'll be live next week. We'll be back next week to continue on with the podcast series, and then in 2 weeks, join us back here, same bat time, same bat channel, and we're going to go over Kamel's autopsy next. All right, until then, God bless you all.